My dad knocked on the door and then yelled, "Come and open the gate." Then he heard a voice coming from inside the property on the other side of the house. It was my sister, yelling, "Wait, I'm coming." And so my dad waited, and then he waited some more. Eventually, he decided to call my mum. When she answered, he asked her if she knew what was going on with my sister. But my mum responded, sounding slightly confused, asking why. My dad started to explain the current predicament, but my mum cut him off halfway through his sentence. She said, "That's impossible. She's not home. She's right here with me now." Watch this video until the end to hear some terrifying true stories about mimics and doppelgangers. I'm your host, Severed Soul. This is something that happened to me quite a few years back, but it stuck with me and I can't seem to get my head around it. I was in high school at the time. Every day, my mum would unlock the front door for me before I arrived home, so I didn't have to mess around with my keys. I came home from school on the day in question, but when I tried to enter the door, it seemed to be locked. So I tried the key in the door, and for some reason it wouldn't turn at all. I knocked on the door multiple times, but nobody answered. I knocked and knocked, but still nothing. It would be really strange for my mum to be out at this time without telling me where she was going. I waited for a while before I knocked again, and eventually my mum came and opened the door. She looked angry and confused. She asked me why I'd gone back outside and told me to stop messing around. I told her, "But Mum, I've just got home from school and I couldn't get in." I explained to her that I'd been outside the entire time. We sat down and began talking about it, and what she told me really creeped me out. My mum told me that she had seen me walk through the door and my bag was on the opposite shoulder. My eyes looked way more blue than usual. I have green eyes, but sometimes they have a blue tint. She told me that I had an angry expression on my face and walked straight upstairs. She decided to leave me alone for a little while before talking to me about my day. She said she definitely saw me walk upstairs and even heard my bedroom door open and slam shut. She locked the front door and went back to doing her housework. After a while, she heard someone knocking on the front door, but decided not to answer because she knew I was upstairs and she wasn't expecting anyone. But when the knocking relented, she answered the door, and there I was. Obviously, we are both quite shaken up by this, and don't really know what to make of it. Could it possibly have been some kind of doppelganger, or a mimic? Have you ever experienced something similar? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. This is my first post here, though I'm a long-time reader. I want to start by saying that this story is absolutely true. I've had a few paranormal experiences in my life, but this one sticks out the most. Little backstory. I grew up in a very rural area, and my stepfather was a coal miner. Payday was a day where literally everybody in town would go shopping and eat out, because almost every husband or father in our town was a coal miner. So I was waiting for my stepdad to arrive home. Only me and my mother were inside the house. I was getting dressed and putting on my makeup. From my parents' bedroom, which was over the other side of the house, I heard my mother yelling at me. She sounded really pissed. She just yelled my name, but I don't have a very common name at all. so there's no possibility that I was just hearing a voice from the TV. It was definitely and unmistakably my mum's voice. I waited for a few seconds when she yelled my name again. Only this time, it was closer, clearer, louder, and angrier. I'll be honest, I was pretty nervous, thinking that maybe I was in trouble for some reason. I called out to her to ask what she wanted, but I heard nothing back. Again, I waited a few seconds before calling out, but again, I was met with silence. I decided to walk through the house to find her, but she was nowhere to be found. I was completely alone in the house. So, I ventured outside, where I found my mother, in the picnic area with the dogs. I asked her if she'd yelled at me, but she said no, insisting that she'd been outside the whole time with the dogs. I asked her again just to be absolutely certain, and again she insisted no. I knew she wasn't lying. She knows stuff like that scares me, and there's no way my mum would scare me intentionally. That horrible, eerie feeling stayed with me all evening, but nothing else happened. Has anything like this ever happened to you? What could it have been? The comments section were pretty active with this post. Proof Chicken 5883 said, "This exact thing literally happened to me a few years ago. It was during lockdown, and both of my parents are key workers. It was just me and my sister alone in the house. Every day when my mum comes home, she opens the door and shouts hello. One day, I was upstairs at around the time that she usually comes home. I very clearly heard the front door open and my mum shout hello. I walked to the top of the stairs to greet her, but found no one there. My sister also came out from the other room expecting to see my mum after hearing her voice. My mum arrived home about 5 minutes later. Needless to say, me and my sister were both really freaked out." Zoe Polioli then commented, "This used to happen to me quite frequently when I lived in my old house. On one occasion in particular, I heard my mum shouting at me with an angry tone in her voice. I walked out into the hallway to ask what she wanted. However, she came to find me first to ask me if I'd heard it too. Very creepy. We both clearly heard my mum's voice shouting at me. There was another incident where my friends heard my voice shouting for help from the garage. It definitely wasn't me. I was upstairs and hadn't said a word. My brother used to hear it too. It's absolutely chilling to think that something in our house is imitating us." Reddit user Dames Vader took things one step further, claiming that he also had an experience. "About 8 years ago, I was living with my best friend and her son, who I refer to as my nephew. I went to take a shower, while my friend and the little man were watching TV. When I came out and walked past the bedroom, I saw her sitting on the bed in a towel drying her hair. She said hello to me, and I said hi, and walked by thinking nothing of it initially. That was until the realisation hit me. How could she have just come out the shower when I myself literally have just come out the shower? I took a few steps backwards and looked into the room. There was nobody in there. I walked into the living room, and there she was, still sitting on the sofa with my nephew. She was adamant that she hadn't moved the entire time, and was equally as freaked out as I was. She claimed that she had a similar experience with her boyfriend. She had seen and heard him enter the house and walk into the kitchen. And she followed behind him. He was nowhere to be seen. His van pulled up outside a few minutes later. A lot of weird things happened in that house, and I'm pretty certain they had a paranormal explanation. This is a ghost story from my family home. My dad isn't a strong believer in anything in particular. He'll pray for a few seconds every morning before he goes to work, but that's about it. This is the only story he's ever told me and my brother which has made him question his beliefs. It was a hot afternoon in Mexico. My dad had just arrived home from a work trip and arrived at the house with my grandma. My dad was extremely tired in the scorching Mexican heat, and he didn't have the key for the gate. The gate was a green metal gate, like a giant sliding door which you couldn't see through. It was practically impossible to climb. It was 15 to 20 feet tall, and the 3 brick walls which surrounded the property were the same height. We had a big property, but didn't live in a rural area per se. Rather, it was a small, dusty town with other large houses around. Next to the gate was a metal door, the same rusty green colour. My dad walked up to the door and started pounding on it. We knew that by this hour my sister, who was at high school at the time, should be home by now. As I said, our house is quite large, with 3 floors and 3 brick walls which push all the sides to either side of the gate. So my dad knocked on the gate and then yelled, "Come and open the gate!" Then he heard a voice coming from inside the house across the other side of the property. It was my sister yelling back, "Wait, I'm coming." So he waited, and then waited some more. Eventually, after a few minutes, he knocked again, much louder. And again he yelled, with an undertone of annoyance in his voice, "Come and open the damn gate!" Again, from inside the house, he heard my sister's voice echo from across the property. "Wait, I'm coming." And while waiting, my grandma looked at him and said, "I wonder what could be taking her so long." After waiting again, even longer this time, my dad decided to call my mum. She answered the phone, and he asked her if she knew what was going on with my sister. My mum responded, sounding slightly confused, asking why. My dad started to explain the current predicament, but my mum cut him off halfway through the sentence. He said, "That's impossible, she's not home. She's here with me right now." As it turns out, my mum got away from work early and went to pick my sister up from school. My mum then took my sister clothes shopping to a near outdoor mall. As he was still on the phone to my mum, my dad began running around the property, checking for any signs of an intruder. He was looking for a ladder, or a hook, or a rope. Anything that showed a sign that somebody had tried to break in. Soon later, my mum arrived home with my sister. They all gathered at the front of the house, and my mum opened the gate so they could get both cars in. While doing so, my dad ran inside the house to get his hidden gun. Then he rapidly searched through the house to find whoever was inside. There was absolutely no sign of a break-in, and nothing had been stolen. In fact, there was no indication that anybody had been inside the property. My dad was understandably confused, and firmly believed that either somebody was still inside the property, or they'd left without taking anything. But that's when my grandma said something to my dad that made him question his beliefs in the supernatural. He said, "We both heard it. If it was a person, why did they sound exactly like your daughter? You and I both know that this was no intruder. They were both there, and they both very clearly heard my sister's voice. To this day, they both swear up and down that it was my sister's voice. After that day, my dad always left my door open for something. My whole family swears that we were living in a haunted house. It wasn't like a creepy cabin in the woods, or a 500-year-old home where a family had been murdered. It was just a piece of land that my mum and dad had bought and built a house on, and it was haunted. That wraps things up for today. Personally, I've never experienced any kind of mimic or doppelganger, and nor do I ever want to. I can't think of anything more terrifying than a spirit, entity, demon, whatever it might be, trying to imitate me or one of my family members. Fuck that. Anyway, I really hope those stories give you nightmares. If you have any thoughts, please leave them in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe for a feast of grim and grisly content. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Severed Soul.